Hi everyone, my name is Justin Atherton. I'm the Peak Performance Consultant for Confidence Unchained. Today's training is on how to speak confidently in every interaction and stop undermining yourself. Now this is a very common thing that each of us does, and it's so common in fact that I believe that it's become unnoticed in our society. We talk with each other in ways that undermine the actions that we take or the actions that we want to take. And this is prevalent in your business life and in your personal life. And this undermining nature of how we speak to each other and about ourselves and the actions that we want to take can have ripple effects that we can't even add up or comprehend. When we're constantly undermining ourselves when we talk, it triggers that subconscious in the other person to think about us differently. We speak with a level of lack of certainty when we talk about the action that we take or what we want to do in life, and it ends up affecting our own mentality in ourselves. So in essence, it affects how other people see us, and it affects how we see ourselves. So I'm here today to show you these different categories of words that we need to eliminate, or at least pay attention to their use, so we can speak more confidently and stop undermining ourselves. And this is in every type of interaction. It can be face-to-face communication. It could be in emails, text messages, negotiations, relationships. This is going to show up in every aspect of your life. So let's dive into this. Okay? First category is the most prevalent to me. They're called stop action verbs. Now what these verbs do, just what the name says, they stop action. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of these type of stop action verbs. All right, so the first one that stands out the most, and it's going to be very prevalent in our language that we use, is try. Now this is going to be available, or we have to notice it in all three tenses. Try, trying, tried. Okay? Start, plan, want, meant to. And one that's really showed up recently in some conversations I've had with people when they start using I'd love to. We'll get into that here in a minute. Love to. And this isn't an all-inclusive list. There might be others that show up, and I welcome you to put them down in the comments below if you see other words that match the stop action verb category here. So let's start with try. Trying implies failure. I think most of us have heard that statement before, and I believe it's true. And I think it's prevalent for all of the stop action verbs, is they all imply failure. All right? So let's throw in a couple examples here. So I'm going to try to eat better. I want to go on a diet. I plan on going to the gym. I'd love to have a better relationship with my spouse. Think about how each of those statements lacks 100% certainty. The things you want to do, you'll try to do, you meant to do, you plan to do, but they don't have action behind them. And we have these conversations every day. I bet you had several of these conversations today about things you plan to do or meant to do or want to do or love to do. And guess what? We've all made those statements. We've all talked to each other in that way. And we end up not taking those actions. So think about how those affect your life and the things you do and don't do. And we let each other get away with that type of language. So maybe after this training, you'll stop letting yourself get away with it and stop letting others get away with it as well. The most prevalent example I can give you for the stop action verbs is walk up to your spouse and tell them, I'll try to be faithful to you. How's that going to land? I want to be faithful. I plan to be faithful. Uh-oh, I'll start to be faithful. We're getting really bad now, right? We want a certain level of certainty, especially from that statement. I will be faithful to you. I am going to be faithful to you. So why do we accept it in other forms of communication? You know, when we want to get a negotiation done, I will give you this result. I am going to complete that task. How much more concrete does that statement land than we'll try to give you this result? I plan on completing that task. So again, these stop action verbs are very prevalent, and I challenge you to listen to yourself when you speak and listen to others around you when they speak, and stop letting yourself get away with undermining yourself in this way. All right? So again, stop action verbs. Take note of these words because they're very prevalent in everyone's language. All right? We're going to move on to the next category of words. So the next category shows up more in your personal life. And this is going to be absolutes. Now, the absolutes, we'll throw in some examples here. Absolutes. So always, never, none, maybe all. What would be some other ones? Only, every. Now, where do you think these show up the most? Again, I said in your personal life, but they show up the most when we have arguments with each other and disagreements. And think about the last argument you had with someone. You always do this. You never do this. You only do this when. Well, every time, and it goes on, right? The funny thing about these absolutes is when you start having conversations or arguments, disagreements in that way, the argument becomes less about whatever the topic of the argument is and more about these words. Well, you always do this. Well, no, I don't always do that. I only do that half the time. Well, you never do that. You never bring me flowers, like the song goes, right? Well, no, there was that one time I did, and then for your birthday. So if we ever argued with any type of accuracy, our arguments would be hilarious, and then they would just stop, right? So think about that the next time you get into a heated argument with someone. I mean, if you have that emotional fortitude, that emotional intelligence, you won't be having those type of conversations. But if you do, or you can think back to times that you have been in an argument with someone, how many times did these words show up for you? Always, never, none, all, every, only. So these are very prevalent in communications we have in our personal life, especially when it's a heated debate. And I will caution you to avoid using these in communications business-wise. When you speak with the always and never and give that type of 100% certainty or 100%, this won't happen, is that accurate? It's very rare that using absolutes has any accuracy to it. Because these will show up a lot in advertisements. Well, we'll always do this and never do this. it's almost like an unfair promise. You're promising 100% when that may not be the case. So again, I will caution you in your business as well, when you're having negotiations or creating plans, to not use these absolutes, because they can lead to a certain expectation, and we all know that expectations lead to being let down. So again, absolutes, they show up in your personal life, they show up in your business life as well. So be cautious when you're using these words. Some words, again, to delete from your vocabulary and monitor their use. All right? So let's move on to another category that is very prevalent. Now, these are going to be our minimizing words. And I think we all have examples of how these show up. Minimizing words. So, some examples of minimizing words would be just, or simply, merely. What are some other ones? I'm sure there's some other ones that have come up. Those are the only ones coming to mind at the moment. But these are very prevalent when we speak to each other. And these undermine what actions that we take, or maybe these are more prevalent in when it's a negative reaction that we impose on someone else, or the negative effects of someone else. Well, I just did this once, or you're talking to little kids. I'm talking with my daughter and asking her what happened. Well, I just took one cookie. Okay, you still took something that you didn't have permission to take. Or other aspects, I simply couldn't handle this. We're minimizing the fact that you couldn't handle a situation. Don't say you simply couldn't handle it. Okay, own up to whatever those effects are that we place on others or place on ourselves, right? So that minimizing language, those minimizing words, are another way that we either undermine what we're talking about or try to lessen the impact that we imposed on someone else. So in a way, it's a way of being dishonest. And so when we own up to the impacts we had on someone else, this is business and personal life, right? When you own up to it and have that integrity, that high level of integrity, and be like, hey, look, this is where we failed at. Not, oh, well, we just missed that one quota. We merely missed one deadline. What does that mean? You still failed. You still missed the deadline. You still didn't make the quota, right? Own up to the failures that you do, learn from them, move on. Stop using these minimizing words, because they'll show up in those ways, and you may start hearing them from your employees. Well, it was simply, and you'll key up on it and go, oh, I hear what's going on now. They're trying to minimize the impact on what their actions or failure to actions had, right? All right, let's move on to another one. So this word is it's in its own category. There's a couple others that fall in line with it, but I really think that this word should have its own category. And I literally had a conversation today about how someone was introduced to this. They heard a video, or actually it was part of my podcast that I put out, and heard this idea of this word and removed it from their vocabulary, and they saw a huge change in the way that they speak. So, very prevalent, again, that we use the word but. I'll throw in the other ones that come in there. We can use although or however. I'm sure you all can think of a couple other examples. But we're going to focus on but. So think about when we use this, what does it really do? So not only does it connect two sentences, for you English professors out there, it really undermines the first half of your compound sentence, right? So if we use some pretty extreme examples, I love you, but we have some issues we need to work on. Oh, that kind of lands kind of rough. I love you, but okay. And we've all been in that situation where we hear like a build-up to this, the but's coming, right? We're like, hey, I think you did a really good job on that project. And that pause, you know the but's coming. You know it's on its way. But here's some areas that we could have done better. What do we do when we use that word? We delete any positive impact that the first half of that sentence has. We just delete it. It's just not there anymore. Okay? So a couple ways that we can fix this. We can, number one, my favorite way is to replace the word but with and. And this is very helpful for, leaders and business owners when you're giving that positive or constructive feedback. Rather than going in and saying, you're a good employee, but I'd like to work on these areas and make them a focus. If you come in at a different angle and use the word and, hey, you're a really good employee, and I think there are some ways that we can improve your productivity. So let's talk about these areas over here. So instead of deleting the positive impact of the first half of that sentence, you're still validating both halves. You're a good employee, and there are some areas that we can improve upon. That's a powerful statement there. Think about how the impact that's going to have on the employee when you give them that positive feedback. They're not going to be thinking about the but, where you just deleted the fact that they're a good employee. That subconscious really picks up on those things. The other way is to just remove it completely and create two sentences. It's a lot more impactful that way as well. You're a really good employee, period. Hey, there's a couple areas that I think that we can work on to make you more productive. Let's sit down and talk about that. So just remove it. So at least replace it with and, or just remove it completely. And although and however are going to work in there as well. Some people use those more prevalently in their language. It's like, we want to do this, however, it's the same impact. Although, it's the same impact of deleting the first half of that sentence, the positive impact. Okay? And again, I had a conversation with someone today that said that they started replacing but with and talked about what an impact that really makes when they talk with other people and the conversations that they have. So think about that. Delete that word from your vocabulary. I would not use it at all. So the last area that we're going to focus on is equivocation. Now, equivocal words are words that show either deliberate vagueness or maybe just a lack of committing to something. Now, and these are very prevalent in your language, and when you start picking up on these words and removing them from your vocabulary, you'll see a big difference on how other people view you and how you just stop undermining your own actions, okay? So, kind of, possibly, what are some other ones? Might have, I think. So you get the idea, right? So if someone asks me, hey, do you want to go to dinner tomorrow? Oh, possibly. What does that mean? So are we going to do dinner or not? I'm not going to wait around and for you to tell me yes or no tomorrow. Hey, did you finish that project? Yeah, I might have. You what? It's yes or no. There's no might have. Or I think I'm going to the gym tomorrow. What does that mean? It means nothing. So it's a vagueness and lack of commitment to whatever we're talking about when we use kind of, possibly, I think, I might have, okay? Sort of might be another one that we put in there. So think about when these show up in conversations that you're having. Are you using these words? Are other people around you using these words? And what's the context? If these show up in business by your employees and the other owners of the company and people you're trying to do business with, if these show up, there's a problem. There's an issue, right? I think possibly, are they purposefully being vague, or are they just lacking the commitment to complete whatever task or that deal, right? And again, in your personal life, if these show up when you're having conversations with your friends, or there's always that one person that's like, oh, well, I might show up. I think I will, or possibly, or I kind of want to go. What are they? Do they have you on their priority list? Are you in that? So you can start reevaluating how people are dealing with you, and if they're using this purposefully or not, right? So again, equivocation, these equivocal words, it's a lack of commitment or a purposeful vagueness when we're having conversations. And make sure not to use these in your emails that you're sending, in your business. We might plan, because it's going to come across. It may not come across consciously on that level, but subconsciously someone's going to pick up and go, that doesn't sound right to me. Like, what's going on? Like, why is that wording? Okay? So, another group of words to pay attention to. All right? So, that are all the different categories. Those are all the categories of the different words to be aware of when we're having communications. All right? And again, these will show up in your business and your personal life. And they're going to show up in text and in the conversations you have with others. All right? So I challenge you to call yourself out when you start using this type of language. Right? Just call yourself out on it. Just change it. If you're speaking and you hear it come out of your mouth, stop. Don't even finish the sentence. Okay? You're having a conversation with someone. Well, I plan to go to... Hang on a minute. I am going to the gym tomorrow. Okay? Well, I'm going to try to... No. I'm going to start eating better. I'm making a grocery list tonight. And I'm going to create that meal plan. Right? So when we catch ourselves in the, those stop action verbs especially, or that minimizing language, when we catch ourselves undermining the actions that we want to take, we can stop, own the failure of it, and then create action behind it. And what I mean by owning the failure is if you tell me, I planned on going to the gym yesterday. You just told me you didn't go to the gym, but you softened it up. But if you own it, if you tell me, I didn't go to the gym yesterday, but I'm going tomorrow. I'm going in the morning. So you own that failure, and then you can come back and create action behind it. And you can accomplish those goals, those tasks that you want to do. And so this is a very foundational piece to your mentality. When you master this, when you master the vocabulary that you're using, that you undermine yourself with, you can speak with a level of confidence and be very concrete in the communications that you have, and you'll be very clear when you communicate with others, whether it's face-to-face or if it's an email or a text message. Think about, writing these words into a resume, how they come across, writing it into a sales pitch. These words undermine everything you're trying to accomplish. So thank you. I hope that this really resonated with all of you out there. And again, that challenge is to pay attention to the words that you use and stop yourself from using this undermining language so you can talk with that confidence that you want.